please join me in welcoming our Chief Minister, Senator John Fondré.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to offer my sincere thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for the invitation to speak today. I'm sure that several of you would argue that this speech is already long overdue, and if you believe the JP's cartoonist, I should have a far better tan and look significantly more rested than I do. As some of you may know, I also apologise for my voice. I'm in danger of having a Theresa May moment at the moment, so please bear with me, and I'm not talking about the Don't style either. But anyway, in the past 4 months, it's been a fairly intensive period where both I and the new Council of Ministers have been far from idle. We're in a transitional phase across government, not only within the public service, as we move to implement what we're referring to as the new target operating model, but also in the Council of Ministers as we develop new ways of working as an effective team. Any change professional will tell you that embedding change and getting people to accept new ideas is not an overnight process. And as a Council of Ministers, we've spent the last 125 days focused on getting it right. We've each become familiar with our portfolios and have built fundamental relationships with the officials and leaders who will implement our strategic vision. We've been dealing with complex legacy issues from across the 8 years of the previous administration, and critically, we've developed a meaningful strategy for the next 4 years. I will not apologise for taking the time necessary to do that. It would have been very easy to come to you earlier with a wish list of policy ambitions. But it would have been just that, a wish list without detail, or perhaps more importantly, commitment from the Council of Ministers as a whole. Now for the first time, or at least one of the first times, we have a Council of Ministers that has come together from across the political spectrum to agree a common strategic policy. And for the first time, we have a civil service that has begun to break the silos that in the past have inhibited real progress against strategic aims. We now have the opportunity to make meaningful and measurable changes to islanders' lives by implementing our group priorities. We worked throughout the summer in a series of working groups and common special sessions to discuss and finalise our priorities. And I believe that the focus we give to them will make a real difference to Jersey, making our island stronger, safer, healthier, and perhaps more importantly, more self-confident. The Common Strategic Policy, we abbreviate that to the CSP, which was lodged with the States Assembly last week, is a statement of our high-level ambitions. It's not a manifesto or a detailed programme of activities, because we'll set that detail out next year in a fully integrated 4-year government plan, along with the details about what it will cost, and more importantly, particularly I suspect to people in this room, how we'll pay for it. The government plan will incorporate and replace what used to be referred to as the medium-term financial plan, and will bring together the policies, the actions, and importantly the funding we need to deliver on our priorities in one place. And I'm delighted that we're doing this, because it marks a real difference from the previous ROAD process, and one that I've experienced, as have other people in this room, but one that I've experienced for the past 12 and a half years. But that's not the only difference. We've listened to islanders and to states members during the election campaign and in the months that followed, and we've pledged to work differently. And I want you to leave you in no doubt that we will tackle the contentious issues, including implementing a comprehensive migration and population policy. We will work in a closer relationship with the States Assembly and the parishes to provide more effective services for islanders, and we will listen to all of our stakeholders, including the Chamber, who have the knowledge and the experience to ensure that the policies we develop are fit for purpose. At the heart of the CSP are 5 priorities which ministers have developed and unanimously agreed should be the touchstones for our government. And to run through them briefly, we'll put children first by protecting and supporting them, by improving their educational outcomes, and by involving them in the decisions that affect their everyday lives. We'll improve islanders' well-being and mental and physical health by supporting them to live healthier, active lives, improving the quality of and access to mental health services, and by putting patients, families and carers at the heart of Jersey's health and care system. And today, in case you've missed it, today is World Mental Health Day, and I cannot think of a better time to make this commitment and to get islanders talking about ways to look after our mental health, especially in our young people. We'll create a sustainable, vibrant economy and skilled local workforce for the future, and we'll do this by delivering an economic framework, and the Minister of Economic Development is over there to quiz him on that later, to improve productivity, critically, by nurturing and strengthening our financial services industry, and by pursuing the diversification of our economy into new areas. We'll also enhance our international profile and promote our island identity as we deliver the best outcomes from Brexit. And we'll reduce income inequality and improve the standard of living by improving the quality and affordability of housing, improving social inclusion, and by removing barriers to and in employment. And finally, we'll protect and value our environment by embracing environmental innovation and ambition. And we'll do this by protecting the natural environment through conservation, sustainable resource use and demand management, and we'll improve the built environment to retain Jersey's sense of place, culture, and distinctive local identity. So those are the 5 priorities, but it's also underpinned by a series of 6 common themes that stretch across departmental responsibilities and 4 ongoing initiatives, including the development of a modern, innovative public sector that meets the needs of islanders effectively and efficiently. Now, some people have questioned why there isn't more detail about how we'll pursue those policy priorities, and say that they are too high level. And yes, they are broad, overarching ambitions, but without a strategic framework to set direction, we risk compiling a programme of activities that lack focus. So this CSP is the foundation on which we will build and what we do across the next 4 years. And it is the standard against which the Chamber, industry and the public will hold this government to account. Now, of critical importance, I suspect, to the audience here today, is the pledge that we've made to provide a sustainable, vibrant economy and to build a skilled local workforce for the future. And as we all know, Jersey has a rich economic history based on fisheries, agriculture, tourism, and the now dominant financial services sector. We have successfully maintained all of these sectors within our economy and must recognise their shared importance in our history, culture and prosperity. The financial and professional services sector has been the bedrock of our economy over recent decades. It is vital that we continue to protect and invest in this sector while embracing new opportunities in both long-standing and developing industries. And our economy must be supported if it is to grow, innovate and diversify. We also must stabilise and reverse the recent declines in productivity, because low productivity impacts our economic competitiveness, earnings and islanders' quality of life. And we need to ensure that the policies we develop to address these issues are built on strong evidence foundations with the support of industry and the public. So the big question is, how will we achieve this? And our first step will be to work with partners, including the Chamber, to develop costed, detailed policies and activities relating to our strategic priorities. So in the interest of transparency, yesterday we published a draft programme for developing what we're referring to as the government plan. And I really do emphasise that's an initial programme of activity that will evolve over the coming months into a full programme of work. It's what sits behind our 5 priorities and shows the depth and breadth of the analysis and discussion that ministers were having over the summer as we developed the CSP. And it shows how we'll translate the strategic priorities into detailed and deliverable outcomes within the public resources available for inclusion in the government plan next year. Integral to our ambitions is the need to develop a comprehensive economic framework that will develop the evidence we need to assess and prioritise how and when we act. And we will work with all sectors of the economy to understand their long-term policy, legislative and resource needs, and design and implement economic development policies as a result. This means that Chamber and our other partners will no longer be working in a vacuum, but will have meaningful engagement in policy development. And this will support the government in pursuing opportunities that create the most benefit for people and the island as a whole. We will also ensure that Jersey's infrastructure is fit for our future needs, including public buildings, sporting and cultural facilities, utilities and the digital environment. This will mean investing in St Helier to make it a more desirable place to live, work, do business and to visit. And to enable this, we will align the economic framework to an investment framework. We will also consider creating an investment fund to support the delivery of the economic and investment framework. So aside from broader policy objectives, there are concrete commitments we'll make in the coming weeks, months and years to enhance our economic success. We will establish a Policy Development Board to develop an agreed population and migration policy that balance population pressures against our economic and environmental needs. We'll focus, and I think I've seen the Minister of Education somewhere down there, we will focus on improving education and skills in the island by introducing proposals for a higher education centre of excellence and student campus fit to deliver both the academic and vocational skills and needs of the island, including digital, finance, innovation, tourism, marine and creative industries. We'll also continue to expand Jersey's positive international reputation and promote our island identity beyond financial services. I believe that our international reputation should reflect the richness and diversity of our island's talents and the many ways that we act as a responsible global citizen, such as through the work of the Jersey's Overseas Aid. And in 2019, we'll launch the Global Jersey campaign alongside our arm's length partners to demonstrate the island's global expertise and reach in international development and philanthropy, hospitality, conservation, culture and the arts, as well as financial services. And I know the Minister for International Development is very keen on that. We want to provide a focus for the opportunities of the island beyond Brexit and our credentials as a global partner of choice. One of the ongoing initiatives that we also set out in the Common Strategic Policy, which has long been an area of particular focus for me, and possibly even the former Treasury Minister who is sitting over there, is the need to establish a sustainable fiscal framework on public finances and make better use of our public assets. As the Treasury Minister announced on Monday in the draft budget, the forecasts point to a structural deficit in our public finances of between £30 to £40 million between 2020 and 2023 unless we take action. So we are taking action. In 2019, to mainly bridge this gap between our expenditure and our revenues, and it's a forecast gap, the public service will make sustainable savings totalling £30 million a year. There will also be further measures announced in the budget. Now, these are not one-off efficiencies, but a permanent reduction to the costs of the public service. And these savings have been identified through the due diligence work that has been going on during the year, and are the first tranche of efficiencies that will be delivered by the One Government Modernisation Programme that the Chief Executive of the States is leading. Some of those savings will be achieved through a permanent reduction in the size of the state's workforce. And here, I should point out, that the state is currently carrying around 600 vacancies and has a staff turnover rate of 12%. So responsible headcount management is a realistic and pragmatic approach. The remainder of the savings will be achieved as a result of modernising the states by improving processes, better commercial contract management, consolidating assets, stopping the duplication of effort, and through the digitisation and automation of routine tasks and services. This is only the start, as over coming weeks, as I've said, we will refine our work on efficiencies for 2020 to 2023, and as I said, to re-emphasise, the Treasury Minister, I'm anticipating, will provide an update of those measures in her budget in December. Now, I know that many of you may be thinking, I've heard all this before. I might well be thinking the same thing, actually, if I was sitting down there. But I do want to be crystal clear that the Council of Ministers and this Chief Minister are committed to seeing these efficiencies implemented. Now, we cannot ignore the impact of Brexit on our long-term policy ambitions. The negotiations between the United Kingdom and the EU were always going to be challenging, and as we reach the zenith, the rhetoric and the risk of a cliff edge will no doubt increase. Now, I'm confident within the Government of Jersey that we are well prepared for this outcome. Brexit has broken the internal silos within our public sector, and the exchange of information and collaborative working across departments mean that we are in the strongest position possible as we enter the final countdown to Brexit Day. And as a business community, as well as a government, we need to demonstrate to investors, to intermediaries, and to our global partners that we have the necessary contingency planning in place for Brexit and the confidence to continue offering world-leading financial services. And I want you to share that confidence, built on an understanding of our unique position, of our detailed planning, and our robust engagement with the United Kingdom. And we've recently undertaken a planning exercise across government to ensure that all departments are prepared for and able to manage the potential risks to their areas of responsibility in the event of a hard Brexit. We're in ongoing discussions with HMRC to formalise the Jersey UK customs arrangement for the future to ensure that we can guarantee the seamless flow of trade and goods, including essential supplies, between Jersey and the UK from Brexit Day. We've met with the representatives of the Aquaculture, Commercial Fisheries and Shellfish Merchants Associations and are working with French colleagues to ensure those industries can continue to access the European market. Alongside ongoing political conversations, we will be arranging meetings for industry with relevant local and regional bodies in France, emphasising a historic mutually beneficial relationship. And indeed, a number of us were meeting with Normandy on last Friday in Guernsey. We've also introduced the Jersey EU settlement scheme to ensure that all EU citizens living and working in Jersey, your colleagues, your directors, your employees, can remain here after Brexit. Through a simple online application, they can guarantee their rights, allowing them to continue contributing a significant cultural, economic and social value to our island. And finally, in January, we'll be launching the Ready for Brexit campaign, which will include a focused week of workshops, roundtables and presentations to prepare all industries and the public for the practical impacts on our island, whatever the outcome of Brexit negotiations may be. So with our overarching ambitions in place, it is right to question the speed at which we'll implement our priorities. Will it be another 6 months before we begin to take any action, and another year before I can provide you with an update? The short answer is no. Once the CSP has been debated by the Assembly, we have an agreed programme of work in place to quickly and hopefully effectively ensure that we are meeting our commitments. Before the end of the year, we will refine the policies outlined in the indicative programme of work published yesterday. We will also complete the move of our customer-facing services to a single site on Lamont Street. In early 2019, we have to present a report to the States, which will enable us to start work on our priorities within the current financial constraints of the present medium-term financial plan. And then in June next year, we propose the 4-year government plan 2020 to 2023, which will provide the fine detailed government activities planned for the following year and set out the priorities for the subsequent 3 years. This plan will then be updated every year on a rolling basis, meaning that any future administration does not have to begin the process anew. And in 2020, just to add to the whole fun that we're all facing, we'll be proposing a new island plan to 2030, setting out an agreed, single, integrated, strategic and spatial approach to the long-term challenges and opportunities faced by our island, which will be dealt with beyond a single term of government. 125 days is barely enough time to scratch the surface of the issues faced by the island and the incoming Council of Ministers. But it does provide time to take stock of the broad challenges we face. The CSP is an ambitious and aspirational document, and I want that ambition shared across the island. But there is a hurdle. If you read social media commentary, letters to the JEP possibly, or just speak to islanders on the street, you will notice an unfortunate trend. We have become at best complacent and at worst openly cynical about our island and every decision taken, before giving the time to see if it will be effective. We have to change that way of thinking. We all need to make a commitment to give the space and opportunity for real change. And I would also ask for your support for the work of the State CEO, Charlie Parker, who I know was received positively by the Chamber in the past, in the complex and challenging job of modernising the public service. We are changing as a government, to ensure that we offer the most efficient and cost-effective public services. But this was never going to be a painless process, and it was never going to be a quick one. But we are delivering the change that was asked for during the elections. Now, if you believe as I do, we'll write a letter, hopefully when we get it right, answer the criticism you hear on the street, and be prepared to stand up for change and the priorities we have set. Now, we used to have a message that Jersey was a welcoming place, and one that valued its culture and its individuality, and it wasn't afraid to take the bold steps to maintain a thriving economy. That message was marred by the scandal of child abuse, poor spending decisions in certain instances, and a loss of confidence in government. We have recognised our failings, and we are moving and have moved to put them right. And today with the CSP, we have a new vision for the government and the people of this island. We will put children first, and we will create a more equitable society where we reduce income inequality and provide opportunity for all. We will provide the services that lead to longer, healthier lives for our islanders. We will develop a diverse, thriving economy whilst recognising our responsibilities both as a global citizen and to our own environment. And we will have pride again in Jersey and our ambitions for its future. We should start spreading that message today. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Great speech. Now on to the question and answer session. We have a couple of roving mics. So if I could see a hand if you want to raise a question, and please state your name and where you're from. Not a tumbleweed moment, is it? Sure, there must be a question out there.
That's good. Okay.
So, Chief Minister, 125 days. How is it around the table of the Council Ministers, and how are things going there?
I think what I would say is that I've been really pleased actually how well the Council Ministers is working together. You know, I know there was some doubts at the very beginning. We've got a very wide spectrum of people on there, but actually they are all coming together. We are working very well. We know there will be disagreement, and we know those instances we will agree to disagree, and that's where then go to the Assembly. But what is also interesting, we're finding people who wouldn't necessarily have agreed with each other, finding points of commonality. So overall, to date, it's working well, and I'm very happy as to how it's coming together.
Thank you. We have a question from Kevin Keane, I believe.
Chief Minister, welcome, good luck. I suppose the question I'd like to ask is, it seems to me that we're reluctant to have a grown-up conversation about population in the island. You know, we've got an ageing demographic. Last time I looked, the number of people over 65 were going to double in the next 10 years or so. But you guys seem to want to tell everybody that everything's going to be okay and there's no difficult choices and we can really control population, all this stuff, and it kind of never makes much sense to me. So when are you going to organise a really grown-up debate about this, and a recognition that if we're going to have 10,000 more pensioners, we're probably going to have a population of 115,000 people?
You're right. To an extent, we've actually started setting the foundations for that debate. And what that means is that the original policy that had been lodged and been deferred, we have put off. I think partially because we obviously have Brexit coming through, so did you want that kind of, just have a degree of certainty for employers for the next year and for employees. But most importantly, part of the original proposals was sort of predicated on certain pieces of work being done. In other words, the proposals were for the States Assembly to request the Council Ministers of the day to go away and do a piece of work. Essentially, it felt a bit of a circular argument, if that makes sense. So those pieces of work have been put in play. So I set the statistics department going on certain pieces of work about 6 or 8 weeks ago. It's not been done before, as far as I'm aware, certainly not in recent times, and it's going to take them time to collate that information. That will then give us some evidence and some data to then formulate that discussion. We're in the process, so that's going to take 3 or 4 months for them to do the piece of work. We're then in the process of, and I'm waiting for the terms of reference to come through, setting up what we're calling a policy development board, which I referred to in the speech, and there will be some external people sitting on it from industry and from elsewhere to then formulate that argument. And at that point, we can then go out and start having that discussion. But you've got to get the foundations right first. We do have to have a proper debate. My intention is that we do that over the next 12 months, and that then something's coming back to the Assembly within that period. But yes, we know it's going to be difficult, but we have to have that discussion. Not afraid to have that discussion.
Okay, another question, please. Come on, you're bursting. There's a question here.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Minister, for a good introduction to what will be a busy term, no doubt. As I'm Jason Lacey from KPMG, as I'm sitting on the digital jersey table, Tony will want me to ask you what your support for a digital future and indeed present for the island looks like. What help can Digital Jersey and colleagues hope to get from the Council of Ministers and your government? I think that's what you asked me to ask, is it?
Well, I think the answer is that actually look 3 people to your left and to the Ministry of Economic Development. Now, one of my problems as Chief Minister is actually how much has ended up in the Chief Minister's department, and digital is actually in there. And so one of the decisions we've made, it's got to be formalised, but it is happening, is that digital will go back to economic development, and that's to put proper focus on it from an economic perspective, from an economy point of view. We've got to give it that priority. It's one of the next arms of our economy coming forward, if it isn't already there at the moment, if that makes sense. And I want to see it given the focus it deserves. That's why it's going back to economic development. And again, there will be a board being put together on which I expect representatives from digital and industry generally to sit on. I'm hoping to have that in place. We're basically waiting for the terms of reference to come back. As soon as we get them down, they'll be signed, and then we'll be in play.
Question.
Justin Clapham, Bacasa. Are there any plans for there to be a implementation of a large university in Jersey that would encourage external students, international and local students, to stay in the island?
I think the short answer, at present, there aren't any plans. There is a lot of discussion around it. Whether that discussion materialises into something, I can't yet say. So, no definitive plans at this stage. There is some discussion going on.
Question over the other side of the room here, Murray.
Yeah, hi, Chris Peach from the Radisson. Will you have an immigration / work permit plan in place before next season? And will you be considering reducing the minimum salary requirements for work permit applications?
If by next season you mean 2019, I assume. At present, it's intended the existing regime will be rolled through into 2019, so you've got the certainty to know what you're operating under. So essentially, the present regime carries through into 2019. When we bring back the policy, as I said, if we say 12 months, that's towards the end of next year, we'll then work out timing from there onwards. But we do want to make sure that industry is catered for, because you need certainty, and this is it's a medium to long-term change.
Simon Nash from Insight Group. Chief Minister, there was a word in virtually everybody's manifesto that I don't think I heard in your speech, and that was the word hospital. Those of us who are keen on good project management, is there anything you'd like to share with us on the way the project has been managed and will be managed?
I think I'm maintaining a silence on that one at the moment. The basic position is that I instruct or set up a board to look into the hospital project. In fact, they're away in Bristol today, I believe, looking at what has been held out as a comparative site to understand some of the issues. I'm expecting them to reporting back probably end of this month, first week of November. That's kind of the timescale they're working on, and I shall be reading their report with interest. At that point, I shall be making a comment.
Okay, there's one at the back there.
Tony Bennett, Rossgar. The State's Innovation Fund was rather a catastrophe, but the idea itself was good, and I know that Tony Moretta of Digital Jersey's come up with some good suggestions as to how it might work. Are you planning on reviving that at any time in the future?
Yes, I should explain my comments about a dodgy table, because I think I know 90% of the people on there from probably age of childhood and working life. So there are also a lot of secrets about me, I suspect. Short answer is yes. We know there were control issues around the whole innovation fund, but the principle was sound. And again, we're just going to work out where it ends up. I know what I want it, where I'd like it to, and again, that'll be something that's sorted out fairly soon. But the shorter answer is yes, and it will be coming back.
Keeping you fit today, Murray.
Hi, I'm Sasha Gibbs, CCA Galleries. There's always been quite a lot of talk about culture and the arts, just broadly, but there's never actually been any investment. What's your plan on that?
Right, so firstly, as you may or may not have seen, in the CSP we have specifically referred to culture in a number of areas through the whole plan. And secondly, you're right, we are acutely aware of some of the pressures being faced across, shall we say, certain cultural organisations as a starting point, and we are seeking to try and address them. I can't give you the details as yet, because they haven't been finalised, but we are looking to achieve some resolution that will satisfy at least some of the imminent requirements that have come to our attention. And then from there onwards, it's going to be a combination of, obviously Lyndon has, one of his assistant ministers is responsible for culture, putting emphasis on it, and obviously Karen Lavey, as International Development Minister, is also looking at external culture as well. So those two will provide the focus that hopefully will at least increase the focus that hasn't been there before.
And back again then, Murray. You stay central in the room, I think.
Hello, Chief Minister. My name is Susan Russell and I'm from the Jersey Financial Services Commission. I would like to ask you, you talked about developing our children and looking after them, and I want to ask you about children with disabilities. And there are children of today, but there are adults for tomorrow. And what do you have plans, especially regarding housing, etc., and looking after them within their adulthood?
I think the very quick answer is that obviously there is a disability strategy and we're committed to implementing it. In terms of housing, we are going to, again, as a separate piece of work, looking at overall, let's call it affordable housing, but that would fall under the area you're talking about, and I would expect that to be covered in that piece of work. Again, that's forward, it's in the process of being set up.
Okay, you want to go another one at the back there?
Mm-hmm.
Chief Minister, thank you for an interesting speech. Mike Barnes from the Hotel Bosie. The State of Jersey and the financial industry and construction are all sort of growing at a rampant rate at the moment. One of the things that worries our industry is local inflation, especially when it's markedly above the UK and the continental Europe. What sort of plans do you have to try and keep our local inflation in check, because you don't have the obvious lever of interest rates on borrowing money and so on and so forth?
That's quite a fun question, that one. I suppose the easiest answer is much increased work on productivity, and that is a piece of work that has commenced and Centre Farm has set it going. You're right in terms of one of the issues now, if I recall correctly, the biggest increase we had recently in terms of the increase in inflation was the increase in interest rates, which obviously then had an onward impact on the figure that we had. I think actually things like school fees, etc., contributed to that as well. So how much we can do to control it is difficult. I said productivity is one of the answers, it's not the only one. In respect of support for tourism, again, I know that is something that's very close to my heart and very close to Centre Farm's heart, and a lot of the other ministers as well. So I'd hope you will gain some comfort from that, and that we do aim to assist and support the tourism industry, as well as a number of others, I hasten to add.
Any more questions? Got time for a couple more if we've got one on the tip of their tongue. There's one there, down here.
Don't feel the need to ask questions just to fill the time.
No, do.
Thanks, John McGranahan from JMIC. The last question just touched upon the construction industry growing at the moment. There seems to be like a lack of skilled labour in the construction industry, which we are in. Is there any, I don't see anybody coming to the island or immigrating to the island with skilled labour. Is there any strategy that you've got in place at the moment to attract people with skilled labour, either from outside of the island or to train people within the island in skilled labour, to offer an attractive alternative to people going into the finance industry and maybe being attracted into the construction industry?
As far as I'm aware, there are certain policies that have been in place, and I do know particularly, again, it's in the policy document that we've just issued, that skills is quite a big focus in there. And again, and you can see you could see her nodding over in the corner as you were asking your question, the education minister is very focused on that as one of her priorities. So looking ahead, yes.
Chief Minister Doug Melville from the Channel Islands Financial Ombudsman. A question for you about your friends on Team Green across the water in Guernsey. What opportunities have you identified, and what process and approach will you take to try and find those opportunities for effective cooperation with the other island in terms of finding those efficiencies and providing a common front where appropriate, given the external challenges faced by the Channel Islands?
Okay, dealing with the second part of your question first, I think, so the common front in terms of challenges we face. But all three of the Crown dependencies, the Jersey, Guernsey, the Isle of Man, do work very well, particularly on the financial services side, in dealing with what I'll call constitutional matters that we are facing from time to time. Now, whether that's Brexit, or whether that's the UK group, or other matters, particularly things like substance and financial services, we work very, very well together already. In terms of between Jersey and Guernsey and the opportunities for savings, again, I think there's a recognition within both islands that we should be doing more. Now, again, I've heard that before, but certainly it's probably more than I was expecting, actually. I'm getting to meet face-to-face with some of the representatives from the council ministers, whether it's Gavin or whether it's Jonathan Mattock. And we are all saying that we need to be achieving more. So put some flesh on it. Before the summer recess, there was a working group, an all-day working group together held in Jersey of the relevant politicians to try and identify areas of working. And there has been officer support and exchanges across the islands to identify where we can make savings. So it is a strand of work that's going ahead. At the very small level, I think the emergency officer has been just signed off and shared with it between the two islands. I'm looking for a lot more than that. Both islands are. So nothing yet to report other than the relationship looks good, and other than the fact it looks positive that we can achieve something. We have another all-day ministerial group, I think in Guernsey, and I think in December, and hopefully then we'll start building up, so in advance of that and after that, building up on actually producing something tangible. But there is a work stream happening, and I think there is a will to achieve something this time around.
Okay, you got any, that one there?
Good afternoon, Mr. Lee Madden from GRA Recruitment. Following on the questions from John and Chris, I don't think I've really got an answer to your question. Jersey doesn't have the skills available to do the jobs. The accommodation is not available to house people to get them over to do the jobs. And our youth is not ready yet to fill these spots. What is your government going to do to address that problem, and when is it going to do it by?
So we know that some of these are not going to be solved tomorrow. We absolutely know that. So accommodation you make reference to. Now, one of the classics, we use the expression key worker, it depends whether that applies to private sector or to public sector. One of the expectations I have is that with the moves, for example, out of Cyril Markle House and out of South Hill, that certainly Cyril Markle will hopefully be replaced by key worker, and that's going to take 2 or 3 years. But that will start assisting an element of the accommodation area that you started talking about. South Hill, there'll be an argument about value, I'm sure. But again, we'll have to see where that comes through. So there are some opportunities, I think, in some of the brownfield sites that the states can release to achieve some of the accommodation issues that you refer to. Skills-wise, again, as I said, that is a longer-term plan, and it is something that's got to be coming up through the education system. In terms of bringing people in, this is when we get into the discussion right at the very beginning from Kevin Keane about the hardest decisions we've got to make on population control. Can't give you a straight, easy answer on that one. We'll support what we can, but we've got to remember that the last 4 years, the plan was 325 people coming in a year, and we had over 1,000 or more coming in each year. That has caused in itself a lot of problems from the point of view that's put greater pressure on house prices and all the other pressures coming through. So those are the difficult discussions we've got to have. So I can't give you an easy answer right now. I can give you the medium-term plans, which I want to refer to. How we solve that, for example, for next year, I think that's going to be a separate discussion we have to have before Christmas.
Okay, I think we've got time for about one more question. Sorry.
That last question. Chief Minister, one of the first documents that you signed before you were Chief Minister was a document signing you up into an agreement with Reform Jersey. Part of that agreement was for a £10 minimum wage to be achieved. Firstly, does that still stand, given that you're now the Chief Minister and you have a Council of Ministers? Secondly, what's the timeline if it does stand?
Oh, that was a good 4 months ago now, wasn't it?
Not forgotten.
The short answer is the agreement, obviously, that I did sign with Reform was between me and Reform. Nothing combined either the Assembly or the Council of Ministers. That doesn't mean we're not going to work to improve, and there has already been a commitment about improving the minimum wage up to a certain level over a certain time frame. And unfortunately, mine's just gone blank as to what year that they're aiming for. I'm going to say 2022, but it might be 2020, and you probably know the number better than me because I just had a brain blank. But after that, I think we've just got to make sure that we work with industry to see what's effective. It is something that the Council of Ministers as a whole has to approve.
Okay, please join me in thanking our Chief Minister, John Fondré. So we're nearly there. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier before we had lunch, we have a couple of events coming up. So we have our Chamber 250 Black Tie Dinner. We've got about 20 seats available. So please get onto jerseychamber250.com and get your seats booked. They're going quickly. Also, Kate Nutt is speaking at our next Chamber lunch, which is on the 14th of November at the Pom d'Or. So that will be, again, another, I'm guessing, a sellout lunch. I think it's a subject, Brexit is a subject we're all interested in. I want to thank Jocelyn from Jersey Employment Trust who came up here and spoke, so thank you. And another call again, please make sure that you support Jersey Employment Trust. These events don't just happen, they take a lot of organisation and they also take sponsorship in order for us to keep the prices where they are. So I would like to give a heartfelt thanks to Hawksford, who are our sponsors of this event, and I'd like to call on Steve Spivey to come and give the final thanks. Thank you.
Well, I shall be very brief, but first of all, thank you on behalf of Hawksford and everyone here to the Chief Minister for sharing your views in relation to the development of the strategic vision for Jersey. And thank you to the audience members for keeping him on his toes, and Murray also for having to run around the room. Sitting listening as a parent and also as an employer, there were a couple of things that stuck in my mind as I was listening to the discussion. There's a lot of focus around planning, building consensus, and also engagement. And it was that engagement piece that I think we can, a lot of us in this room, be it in small businesses, larger businesses, can really take to heart and actually think about where do we fit in. So we talked about mental health, and I think it's particularly fitting today to think about what can we do as employers, both with our existing workforce and also to educate our workforce in relation to how we deal with children's mental health issues. Again, linking back into that common strategic policy which is being shared. It's a difficult challenge, and it's one which is quite uncomfortable, and that just makes it even more necessary for us to actually take this forward. We saw earlier on with Jocelyn Buckworth the amazing things that the people of this island can actually achieve, and I have no doubt that we can achieve something here too. There's a number of thank yous that I need to make, and they are in no particular order. First of all, to Denell's for providing the wine for this afternoon's event, to Cooper & Co for the coffee, to our venue, Radisson Blee, and also obviously to the Chamber, because as has been explained, these events don't just happen. It's important that we come together to think about the issues that actually do face our island, and hopefully to make some progress on things which have been quite similar and consistent issues if we think back to various debates and events that have been held over recent years. A number of us are privileged to call Jersey our home, and I think we owe it to ourselves and our community to actually take some of these things forward. Elliot, I'm not sure whether I'm handing back to you at this point. My notes say I am, but if I'm not, I will wish you all a lovely afternoon. I would like to refer to the bright blue sky that is illuminating our island this afternoon. It is still out there, I'm told. So do enjoy it. Thank you very much for coming.